Welcome back to the OS podcast. Today we're going to be talking all about reverse dieting. What to do after you finish your diet, you just reached your fat loss goal. Now it's time to maintain all the hard work you just put in and not only not blow up and put all the way back on in your first 1 to 2 weeks post diet, but get yourself in the best position to either enter a muscle growth phase or maintain your current look and stay lean. So we're going to cover what exactly is reverse dieting and where the whole idea come from, why it's, in my opinion, ineffective and actually not the best approach, what your post diet priorities should be, and then a smarter approach to the post diet phase. And finally, practical, actionable steps to transition from a deficit to a healthy, sustainable baseline that you can actually maintain for a while. So whether you're just coming off a diet, you're just starting your diet, you're already thinking about what you're going to do, which is great, hats off to you, or you're just curious about how to maintain your results once you get to your fat loss goal in the best way possible, this episode is for you. So what exactly is reverse dieting? Well, reverse dieting is a strategy where at the end of a fat loss phase or any weight loss journey in general, rather than jumping straight back to maintenance calories or a surplus after dieting, you very gradually increase your caloric intake over quite a bit of time. So this will typically look like adding in small increments, say 50 to 100 calories week by week, usually in the form of carbohydrates or fats, with the goal eventually being to reach your new maintenance level. Now, the rationale behind this is based on the fear of post diet fat gain, which is completely reasonable. And the idea is that by creeping up calories slowly, so adding 50 calories 1 week, then another 50, and then another 100, you can outpace or even potentially revive your metabolism, I've heard, minimize any chance you regain body fat, and potentially maintain a lean physique while allowing your body to gradually adapt to an increased energy intake. And it's for that reason many people think this strategy helps prevent that dreaded rebound effect after a period, especially a long period of caloric restriction, being in a prolonged deficit. So while reverse dieting, all that might sound smart in theory, in practicality, in my opinion, it's not only ineffective, it's also a complete waste of time that can delay recovery and hinder your long term progress. Reason being, and what I believe is the major flaw with the reverse dieting strategy, is that it keeps you in a caloric deficit well beyond your diet's over. Let's say you finish a diet in a 500 calorie deficit and you increase your intake by 100 calories. You're still in a 400 calorie deficit. Then, if you add another 100 calories the next week, you're still in a 300 calorie deficit. You're not at maintenance. And week by week, you're just slowly climbing out of the hole, but never actually recovering and reversing the negative adaptations we get from being in a prolonged deficit. Post diet, your body is often in a highly fatigued and in a pretty stressed state. Hunger hormones can be dysregulated depending on how lean you got, how long you dieted. Sleep might not be in a good spot depending on how lean you are. You're likely dealing with elevated cortisol levels, more sympathetic drive of the sympathetic side of your nervous system, potentially low energy, high fatigue, not great performance in the gym. So why would you drag this process out by slowly increasing calories and only prolonging the stress in your body when the goal should be to reverse the negative adaptations that naturally occur when you're dieting? And instead of helping you go in that direction, slowly adding in 50 calories this week, 100 calories the next week, you're kind of just extending the time you're keeping your body in that more stressed out state. It's a physiological stress on the body to be in a calorie deficit. So more hunger hormone dysregulation, more detriment to sleep, etc. So now the question is, if the goal after dieting is to recover and return to a healthy baseline, does reverse dieting actually help you get there? Or is it just slowing you down and a waste of time entirely? Well, when someone finishes a fat loss phase, whether that's, let's say they got lean for a photo shoot, or they wanted to get shredded for vacation, get shredded for the beach, or let's say someone just dropped 10 to 20 pounds. The number one priority post diet is recovery physiologically and psychologically. But again, the problem with reverse dieting, like we just went over, is that it completely delays that process. Again, say you finish your diet in a 500 calorie daily deficit. You've been losing about, let's say, a pound of fat per week. Now your plan is to reverse diet because you do not want to gain any body fat. You spent the last, let's say, 3-4 months getting pretty lean. You're happy with how you look, and you're scared of putting on any body fat at all. So you're going to increase your calories by 100 this week. Next week you're going to increase it by another 100. What exactly are you recovering from? You're still in a deficit, you're still underfed, you're still under recovered. So the goal after a fat loss diet is no longer fat loss. You're not trying to continue to get lean. At that point, your goals shift now to restoring normal sleep, stabilizing your appetite, regulating energy, mood, libido, stress, inflammation, even. And you need to get back to training hard again if you want to make progress with your physique and if you want to maintain your physique long term as well. So none of that happens while you're dragging out a calorie deficit, because when you're in that depleted state, your body, it doesn't feel safe. So you're not immediately after you finish your diet, forget about adding in 50 to 100 calories, and simply give your body the fuel it actually needs to restore baseline function. So now let's talk about how we do that while minimizing any fat gain, which is the reason people reverse diet in the first place. So what do you actually do once the diet is over? Okay, so the moment fat loss phase ends, you need to move directly to maintenance calories. There's no play and hover in between there, directly to maintenance. So let's go back to the example I used earlier. Say you were dieting at 2,000 calories per day. Your estimated maintenance is, let's say, 2,500. Rather than increasing calories by 50 or 100 per week, I'd bring calories straight up to 2,500 the day after you reached your fat loss goal. Because by doing that, by bringing your intake back to maintenance or even a bit above, depending on how lean you got, you're giving your body what it needs to then feel safe and regulate again and restore all those negative adaptations that occurred. So you're going to signal to your nervous system, it's time to calm down. Sleep will start to improve. Strength will come back. Pumps in the gym come back. Hunger hormones will start to normalize. Your mood stabilizes. Potentially thyroid function. Now, if you're someone who finished the fat loss phase and you're already at a healthy, sustainable body fat level, which is for most people, let's say you're around that 10 to 12% range, you're not overly shredded, and your goal might be to just maintain that physique. You want to maintain 10 to 12%. Jump back to true maintenance, and you're chilling. But this is where, if you're someone who got really lean, where your body fat is artificially low and your physiology is just completely wrecked because you push yourself pretty damn hard, you'll actually need to regain a bit of fat. But for the majority of us, we can go right to maintenance and not put on any body fat, especially if we only got to that 10 to 12% range. If you got, let's say, lower, if you got around that 7-8% range, then you're definitely going to want to gain a little bit of body fat over time, though. It doesn't need to be immediately, which is why you'll go into a small surplus, like aiming for a rate of gain around 0.25 to 0.5% of your body weight per week. But majority of us, we can just hover at maintenance and maintain because we got around that 10 to 12% mark. And I know this is where a lot of people get nervous, including myself in the past. I would be clinging on so hard to how lean I got. I'd be actually scared to eat more food. And then if I'd see the scale go up, I'd be shaking, like, well, what's going on here? Realistically, it's just water and you're filling out glycogen and carbs. So it's not a big deal at all, which is what I wish I could go tell myself. And you might be thinking right now, adding in that much food, jumping back straight to maintenance, I don't want to ruin all the hard work I just put in. I want to stay lean. You might be a little scared to add that many calories back and assume that as soon as you bump your calories up, you're going to blow up. But the good news is that is not how it works. So let's go back to the example again. Say you were in a 500 calorie deficit per day. Now you jump straight back up to maintenance. You're eating 500 more calories than you were yesterday. People panic and think that's 3,500 calories in a week. I'm going to gain a pound of fat instantly. But they forget how dynamic the body actually is. When you increase your calorie intake, especially after a long diet, your body doesn't just store all that extra energy as body fat. Several things happen at once, which are the following. First, your non-exercise activity, your NEAT automatically goes up because that's going to be unconsciously going down your whole diet. You might start fidgeting more, twitching more. You might start moving more throughout the day without even noticing it. Your brain registers that there's more fuel available and it naturally ramps up your unconscious movement. That burns calories. Second, the thermic effect of food goes up. So the more you eat, especially from protein, the more energy your body uses to digest, assimilate, and process those nutrients. Now, it's not going to be a huge number here, but it adds up, especially when your food quality is high and you're eating real, whole, nutrient-dense meals. And third, and this is a big one, your training improves. You can now push harder in the gym. Recovery between sets improves. You're no longer dragging your feet through workouts. You've got more fuel, and that shows up as performance. And performance drives adaptation, and that adaptation will be muscle growth. So instead of risking fat gain, you're now setting yourself up to build muscle more efficiently and burn more calories in the process. And then, of course, there's the psychological side, because now you're no longer, well, this will take some time. It won't just be the next day, but it'll take around 4 to 6 weeks where you're no longer obsessing over food. You're no longer fighting cravings every hour of the day. You feel more stable. You're more focused. cognitive function may be improved, you're more energized, you can be social again depending on how lean you got and how hard you push your diet, you're sleeping better, and all of that feeds in your ability to stay consistent with your habits long term. So, long story short, you don't just gain body fat by jumping to maintenance. In fact, for many people, and I've seen this time and time again with clients, it's actually quite the opposite. You actually get leaner, fuller because you drop off that stress and water. And even if you do regain a few pounds, which is completely normal, that weight is often a mix of water and glycogen. And if you compare your pics from, let's say, right when you finish your diet to say your first or second week at maintenance, you will almost certainly look better because you will just fill out. So the bottom line is you do not need to crawl your way slowly out of a calorie deficit, especially after a prolonged diet. Your body is ready to respond immediately. You just have to stop being afraid to give it what it needs, which I get can be a bit scary, but trust me, you will not put on any body fat really if you jump to your true maintenance. Now I want to lay out exactly what to track during this post-diet phase, as well as give you a few tips to help you stay lean for the foreseeable future or smoothly transition into a muscle growth phase if that's your next goal. Because you just finished a successful fat loss phase, especially if you got down or near single digit body fat, you're in an incredibly responsive state. Your body is literally primed to build muscle with minimal fat gain, but only if you manage this first phase properly. So first, keep tracking everything you were tracking during your diet. Your weight, your steps, your training, your food intake. You don't want to let those habits slip just because the diet is technically over. Consistency is still king. So the first change you make is calories, like we spoke about, goes up to maintenance. Then see how you respond after 1 week, and from there start to slowly pull down your cardio or any additional expenditure. But don't stop everything at once. And obviously, keep your diet based around whole foods. And when you make that jump to maintenance, I'd add in those calories primarily through carbohydrates. Now, expect some fluctuation with your weight because you're refilling glycogen stores. You're going to be holding more water. You're going to be increasing food volume. You're going to be improving digestion, all of which can bump the scale without adding an ounce of fat. So it's important to not obsess over the number. Try to detach yourself from the scale weight, but look at the weekly trends and how you're feeling as well. So if your sleep is better, if your strength is climbing, if your mood is improving, that is very good progress, even if the scale ticks up a little, which it will. So for those of you planning to enter a growth phase, not just hover around maintenance and maintain that physique, I'd recommend holding at true maintenance for about 4 to 6 weeks or until all your biofeedback is looking good. So that means until sleep is solid, until training performance is improving, until hunger is manageable, and your energy is very consistent. Once those are stable, that's when I'd enter a controlled surplus, starting with a small bump, about 10% calories over maintenance. Again, very small. And that's how you set up a very, very long runway for some nice lean gains. So that is a wrap on today's episode on reverse dieting. If you've been stuck in that reverse dieting cycle or afraid to eat more after a diet, I hope this gave you a new perspective and a little permission to actually take care of your body after your diet. I appreciate you watching or listening, however you're consuming this. All my links are below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.